we are now reaching our 100th year as a parish. That speaks something. That speaks of 100 years of individuals, of families, of priests, of nuns, of religious, who have for the past 100 years been the living stones of this parish of Sacred Heart. And it's important to honor all which has come before us as we prepare now to move forward into the next 100 years.
I think our parish is phenomenal.
Sacred Heart is a great school.
I love Sacred Heart. I thank God for it all the time.
It's a great parish.
I like it.
Sacred Heart is solid.
Great place for families.
A great place for to hear the Word of God.
More than just a community, it's more like a family. When you feel like you're part of something.
Work and pray together, that's the important thing.
I just want to be a part of it.
I love the tradition.
The vision of the spirituality.
Devotion to the Eucharist.
Its architecture.
The liturgy is really important to us. So.
We like to see the church be as beautiful as it can.
I would recommend this parish to anybody.
If you really want to get to know Christ, this is the place to be.
The church is, of course, a beautiful church, and that's primarily because of the people who have built it over this past 100 years. One could say, well, this is a beautiful space. Why would we want to go beyond this? Well, because the need calls for something different. Our church does need some physical improvements.
We started looking at the walls. The marble is separating in some areas. That becomes a safety issue. We also were very concerned about the ceiling. We have to look at the parish to make sure it's safe for our parishioners and neighbors.
So since we have to make some physical changes just for the simple maintenance and safety of the church, perhaps now is a time to reconsider how do we want this church space to manifest our generation. It seems like a very ideal time to take the time to beautify the church and to let it truly have now the mark of our generation, so that the next generation can look back and know something about us and something about our faith by simply looking at the church as it is.
In 1912, 54 families came together and wrote a letter to Chicago's Archbishop Quigley. Their request was simple. They needed a priest for a new parish forming in the small town of Lombard, Illinois, population 1,300. Soon after, Father Anthony Becker arrived. What he lacked in experience, he made up for in enthusiasm. Staying with the Hogan family in a small white cottage next to the railroad tracks, Father Becker quickly set about organizing the first classes of the Sacred Heart School. They were held in an old barn on the Hogan's property, just south of St. Charles Road. Led by Father Becker, the families managed to scrape together enough money to begin construction of a simple church building with a few classrooms. The building cost more than $20,000, nearly as much as all the parish families earned in 1 year. If we gave as generously today, our gift would be almost $75 million. The monthly payments weren't easy, and more than one bake sale was held to raise the funds. The generosity of the parishioners kept the young parish afloat, even through the difficulties of the Great Depression. In 1925, a convent was added, eventually housing 23 Sisters of St. Francis. The school was expanded in 1930, again in 1953, and the new church completed in 1959.
The Second Vatican Council has called the Eucharist, rightly so, the source and the summit of our Christian life. And so therefore the place where that takes place, the sanctuary, the altar, is the point of focus. And therefore it deserves, by that very fact, all the beauty and all the attention we can muster to create a space which is truly worthy of the event which is happening there. The time and energy and the artwork that we are planning for the church, it can take the believer And in a moment of silence, in a moment of prayer, in a moment of communion with the Lord, it can lift their hearts and their souls, because this is what beauty does. I see in this project a real beauty. And of course that excites me, because I love the church, I love Christ, and anything that furthers the life of Christ in a parish, I'm all for.
The history of Sacred Heart can be measured in days and years. It can be measured in the dollars of so many families who gave what they could. But perhaps the best way to measure our history is to ponder how many times the body and blood of Christ was made present upon the altar, how many thousands of communions were received, how many millions of sins have been forgiven in the sacrament of confession. How many people are in heaven because of this parish? Only God knows. But if it were just one, this whole legacy of generosity would have more than served its purpose. This is our true history, a history of giving, a history of bringing people closer to Christ.
The initial group of people who formed this parish almost 100 years ago took a risk. They made a decision. They acted. And we have to do the same.